Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist, created by Austin Winsberg. I was immediately captivated by the premise for this show, in which the main character, Zoey Clark, gains this incredible power that allows her to see and hear people's innermost thoughts and feelings, all expressed through beautiful musical numbers. So seeing all the promos for this show, I was excited to watch it just based on that concept alone. Because really, what a truly fun, creative, imaginative idea for a show. But what truly won me over, even before watching the pilot, was an article I had read that was an interview with Austin Winsberg, in which he explains that the inspiration for the show came from his own personal place of grief. That tragically he lost his father to a rare neurological disease called progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP. And in reflecting on that time, he thought to himself, what if the way my father had seen the world was through musical numbers? So he took that idea and created this show. And it just reminds me of a quote from the late Carrie Fisher, who said, "Take your broken heart, make it into art." And that's exactly what Austin Winsberg did with this truly wonderful, beautiful show. And at the heart of it all is that it's about empathy. That the whole point of what Zoey calls heart songs, when she hears a heart song, is that it's people singing their inner truth. And it's all based on feeling. So whether it is their deepest desires or fears or pain or joy, that it's things that we all experience. And it's that reminder that we may not know what someone is going through unless really getting to know them. And it's also a reminder that we're not alone in those feelings, that everyone has hardships and struggles. So just that, with the actual connection and with having compassion, it's all just so beautiful through these songs. And also the fact that this show depicts grief in such a really raw, authentic way, and that even though there are those 5 stages of grief, of course, that everyone experiences it differently, and that it's so painful and difficult and tragic, but through it all, that then also brings beautiful things like strength and compassion. So that's just all truly wonderful themes that this show expresses so beautifully through song, because music really is the universal language. And it gives me a newfound appreciation for the songs that they have in the show, because with each song it's driving the narrative in some way. And the whole thing is that sometimes it's people, they're hiding their true feelings, but that you can't escape what you're truly feeling. So then with this power, Zoey has to find a way to help them in some way. And it's interesting how first it just comes off as a burden for her, but then she grows to truly appreciate this new ability. So that's just such wonderful growth. And Jane Levy is absolutely phenomenal as Zoey. The whole cast is so talented, but I mean, Jane Levy just is incredibly talented in this role. And again, the choreography, it's so beautiful as well. And the choreographer is Mandy Moore, not the actress and singer. I knew right away without seeing her name, because also she's worked on Dancing with the Stars and So You Think You Can Dance, and she's also worked on La La Land, so she's a truly wonderfully talented choreographer. And saying all this praise, this just reminds me that seeing and reading all these interviews with the cast, they actually, like in all these interviews I've read and everything, I love how much they praise one another. And that's a truly beautiful thing, how much respect they have for one another and just how much they admire one another. So as a viewer of this show, that just makes me appreciate it all the more. So it truly just gripped me from the very beginning. But what I really love, so the whole thing with the power is that she gets it in the first place, as we see in the pilot, from going to get an MRI, and then when there's an earthquake, as she's in the MRI machine, then with the earthquake, then all the songs are downloaded into her brain. She's obviously weirded out when she first hears someone singing, and the first song she hears is All By Myself. And then the first big musical number is Help, so a literal cry for help. But I love how just in that first episode alone, how we see all these different layers to the power, showing all these different sides to human behavior and what it is people are really feeling and what it is they are keeping a secret. So, for instance, when the first truly, really moving, deep number, when Zoey's co-worker, Simon, played by John Clarence Stewart, is singing Mad World. And it's great because he's introduced as this really easygoing, charismatic, happy guy, but then through that song, Zoey sees that he is hurting on the inside, and then when she talks to him, then she finds out that tragically his father committed suicide, so he is still struggling with that grief and that loss. And then on a different side to it, when Zoey's other coworker, Leaf, played by Michael Thomas Grant, is saying how, oh, I hope you get the promotion, I'm rooting for you, and then he's saying, oh, all I do is win, and then he starts singing, all I do is win, so then it's one of those things where, oh, well, so he's clearly not rooting for her, he's clearly just boasting himself up, and he feels he deserves it, so it's one of those things where he doesn't necessarily have her good intentions at heart. But then, most powerfully of all, when her father, when we see how he is tragically imprisoned in his body because of this disease, her father, Mitch, played by Peter Gallagher, and then when she confesses to him everything that's been going on and how she feels so alone, and then she's saying how the one person I could always talk to isn't really here anymore, and it's so absolutely devastating. But then it's such a truly beautiful, powerful moment when her father starts singing True Colors. Oh my God, it's so absolutely beautiful, because then it's that moment where this power for her, which she's been seeing as this kind of a burden, and what is she going to do about this power, but then now it's this true, beautiful gift that not only is her father still processing everything, but now he's communicating with her through song, and it's so absolutely beautiful and uplifting and so incredible. And then when they go sailing together, the family, with Zoey's mother, Maggie, played by Mary Steenburgen, and her older brother, David, played by Andrew Leeds. And then when the mother's saying, oh, isn't this so nice, and it brings back happy memories, doesn't it? And then the dad just takes her hand. And it's so absolutely beautiful. Oh my goodness. And then at the very end of the episode, when all of a sudden her best friend Max, played by Skylar Astin, just starts singing I Think I Love You to her. And it's just, oh, my best friend's in love with me. Okay, it's another thing to deal with now. But that was the thing I saw the most in the promos. That, and also the whole thing with Zoey's boss, Joan, played by Lauren Graham. I mean, Lorelai Gilmore. Awesome. But her singing I Can't Get No Satisfaction. So it's interesting how they as an NBC played up more of the comedic aspects of the show in the promos, but really the driving force of it all is Zoey's relationship with her father, and that tragically she's losing her father. So it is great though how, since we're seeing this all through Zoey's eyes and with her heart songs, that when she hears a heart song, then they call it zoality, that's only she can see and hear it. So those were all the things that, in particular to me, that are most compelling. Everything with her family and what they are going through in losing her father and how devastating that all is. But I do appreciate that, as heavy as it gets, that it does have those lighthearted moments, and that the whole thing, again, about empathy and how she is helping people and how it is helping her grow by helping people. Because what's great too is something that Austin Winsberg has explained, that Zoey, being a computer programmer at SparkPoint, and by the way, side note with SparkPoint, how amazing would that place be? Like, what kind of building that would be to work at? I mean, yes, I would love a free cereal bar and omelet bar, bread bar, taco bar. That's incredible. And all the amenities and everything. But the whole thing, though, the fact that she's a computer programmer, a computer coder, being a logical, analytical person, that with this power, it opens up her world, and understanding that sometimes it's more based on feeling and how you solve problems that way. And I have to say, though, one of my favorite characters is, without a doubt, Mo, Zoey's neighbor, played by Alex Newell. And first off, what's great about Mo is that he's the very first person we hear singing like actually singing. And it's just funny how first Zoey's so annoyed by him singing and everything, and also she's listening to podcasts, so it's funny too that she's not exactly music savvy, so when she doesn't know a song, it's great that Mo is her guide through all of this. But then when we really get to know Mo in episode 4, when we find out his backstory, and that was based on Alex Newell's real life growing up and singing in the church, how he felt he had to dress like a man, so he's not being his true self since he's gender fluid and prefers to dress as a female. So then by the end of the episode, when he's able to be his true self, and when he's singing This Little Light of Mine, and first off, obviously he's an amazing singer, but it's also one of those things where at the beginning of the episode when he is singing Great Pretender, because him too, how he's so happy and joyous and open-minded and everything, but that he too is hurting and he wasn't able to be his true self. But then when he's able to and he's dressed as he wants to dress and he's singing his heart out, and it's beautiful because that song is actually happening. That's not a heart song. He's really singing, and it's so joyous and uplifting. One of those things where look what happens when someone can be their true selves, their light shines. So that's so beautiful and heartwarming, and I just really love that. And I also love how, despite all the musical numbers, just even small moments of character growth, like in episode 2, and it's great though in episode 2 that it starts out with a musical performance by Jane Levy singing, like Zoey singing I've Got the Music in Me, because that's just great too. But also it's just like a fun nod to the audience, like, oh, Zoey's singing, and that it's not actually happening though. It's a whole dream sequence, or a nightmare really, because then at the end the piano and all the instruments fall on her. Poor Zoey. In that episode though, I love how at the beginning when you see the poster on her wall that says everything is under control, like CTRL control, and it's crooked, and then she fixes it. And in that episode, the whole thing is her trying to understand the powers and Mo helping her out with that. But then by the end, she's realizing, well, maybe it's okay to just kind of go with the flow and just see what happens with it. So then at the end, when the poster is crooked again, she just leaves it. So just small moments of growth, even in that sense. I really love that. I also love how the characters grow as well. And one of my other favorite characters is Tobin, played by Kapil Talwalkar. And I definitely would not have said that in the very first episode, where he first comes off as this really douchey bro character and really misogynistic, even though he says how my mom left me when I was young, so my life has been a series of rejections by the opposite sex. Poor Tobin. But he's just so funny, and he's really genuine, and he's growing, and we see different sides to him. And in particular with when he sings his heart song, when he sings Don't Speak by No Doubt, that's an amazing song first off, but also it's another thing showing how he's more sensitive than he gives off, and it's just like a great thing, and it's really sweet. And then he's just so like funny and genuine, so Tobin's amazing. I love Tobin, and I'll tell you the exact moment that really like put him over the top for me, and it's so random and specific, but it's in episode 8, which obviously is a whole other incredible episode, Zoey's Extraordinary Glitch. But the moment is when Zoey is in the men's room. That's when she's arguing with Max, and then Tobin just walks in, and he's just like, "Sup, bro? Sup, Zoey?" He's just like so nonchalant about it. So he's so funny. Oh my gosh! But his friendship with Leaf is so pure and so sweet, and even with Leaf too. How first he's kind of this adversary for Zoey, and then he's jealous of Zoey because she gets the promotion. But then also we see new sides to Leaf when then he is fooling around with their boss Joan. Then when he really is developing feelings for her, he's actually in love with her. So then how we see that throughout the show too, but in particular when he sings Let's Stay Together. So I could go through each episode and say all of my favorite musical numbers, but they're all great in their own way because they're each serving a purpose to the narrative. So I love how all the songs, it's just a wide range of genres and artists and eras, and it gives you newfound appreciation for the songs. Then seeing how Mitch's declining health is affecting the whole family, all of the pain they're going through, and how Zoe's doing her best to help everyone. So the whole thing in episode 8, when she gets that glitch in her powers, when then it's the opposite, when she's singing out the heart songs and everyone can hear her, but then when her power is normal, then she's the only one who can hear the songs. But when they get the heartbreaking news that he's entering the final stages of the disease. I always love things where, so once we know the rules of the power in this case, then it's flipped on its head and just taken into a new direction. So then it's Zoey singing all the songs. I just really admire the ambition of this show and how they did different things with the musical numbers. Another absolutely beautiful one is in episode 9 with the performance of Fight Song with all of the deaf actors. And that was actually all deaf actors. They worked with Deaf West Theater. And in the episode, it's the caretaker, Mitch's caretaker, Howie, played by Zach Orth. And he's just such an angel of a character. He really is. And I love his line where he says how part of being a caretaker, what I love about it is how much of an insane gift this all is, of breathing our own breaths and walking and making our own choices. And I love his performance at the start of the episode when he sings The Sound of Silence and then Mitch joins in. An absolutely beautiful performance of an amazing song. But the whole performance with his daughter, Abigail, played by Sandra Mae Frank, when she is performing her heart song, and that was just such an absolutely moving number because he's wanting to protect her, but then she's angry that she doesn't want to be shielded from the world just because she's deaf, that she wants to go to Africa. And then when she's performing, Austin Winsberg had said that he fought for that whole performance because they wanted subtitles or something, or they considered having people sing, but he knew from the start he just had to fight for it to just be silent, just having the instrumental, and then you just are focused on the performers, and it was so much more impactful that way. So that's great that he was able to have it be what he wanted, envisioned for that particular number, because it's so powerful and moving, and you just focus more on what she's feeling and her anger in that, and that she is voicing her strength and individuality, and that she can do this on her own. So that's just a truly beautiful, absolutely phenomenal number as well. But in episode 8, at that point, that's when Max knows about her power, because the only thing that's missing in episode 8, though, which apparently was cut, was Mo. Unfortunately, Mo's not in that episode, but with Max kind of putting his own feelings aside and helping Zoey out, because the whole thing is that she has to face her truth. And she's at like her highest stress level because that's when their CEO is coming in. He's hilarious too, the CEO, Danny Michael Davis, played by Noah Weisberg. He's just so funny when he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to give me some carrots. I'll bring them to my biological parents. And then in the season 1 finale, when he's saying, oh, give me an omelet, hold the eggs. He's so funny. But when they have to give that presentation about the chirp, and just every musical number is amazing. Starting with Crazy, when she's just like losing her mind. She's going crazy. Poor Zoey. But it's funny then because in her mind, she's picturing all the backup dancers. But then what's actually happening when we see the reality, when she's just dancing by herself, and poor Zoey, oh my goodness. And every number in that one's amazing. When she sings I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus, at that point when she had seen Leaf and Joan kissing. And it's so funny because they make that parallel when she's saying how she was watching Jim Carrey movies and she's up to Liar Liar, and it really is like similar to that when she can't escape that truth. Like she tries to leave her body, won't let her. What's so funny is that I didn't notice the first time, but the second time watching it, when she's singing that song in particular, when she like walks back up to them and she's like prancing, like I'm prancing right now. It's so funny. But like her truth coming out and she can't stop it with the songs. Then when she sings Pressure by Billy Joel, when she's giving that presentation, and then the reality, she's like going in, like she looks like she's like going crazy and having a meltdown. Then Max steps in to help her, which is so sweet, which then leads to her singing I'm Yours to him. And then when she sings I Want You to Want Me to Simon, and Max gets upset when he walks in. So that song being about attraction, whereas the song she sang to him is about love. But I mean, that's her own personal thing. She didn't want these feelings to come out, but they had to come out through this glitch, and she has feelings for both of them. But I love the ending when she sings How Do I Live to her father. It's so heartbreaking, but it's so beautiful and so powerful, because the whole point is that she's avoiding her emotional truth all day, the reality that her father is going to die soon. So then when she sings to him and he's crying, it's just such a beautiful scene. And when he comforts her, it's so powerful. And I do like, though, that Max kind of is the guide for her, saying, gently telling her, so you have to go and face your truth, when she tells him, the news they received that morning that her father only has a few weeks to live. So it's just so devastating. And the whole thing then, just jumping ahead to episode 10, Zoey's extraordinary outburst, when all of these feelings are really hitting her and her grief is manifesting itself in anger, since obviously that's one of the 5 stages of grief. So she's lashing out at everyone. And that episode is just, I really felt all of her devastation in that episode, particularly when she starts yelling at Howie because he had given Mitch a sedative to help him sleep. And she's saying, how could you take this? I don't have much time left with my father. You took this moment of lucidity. How am I supposed to communicate with him? And she's screaming at him. I just felt all of her raw, deep pain in that moment. Oh my goodness. And that whole episode, everything is so heated and everything. I do love the opening scene, too, with Max and Simon each singing Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. And it's just, the imagery of that one, too. One door closes, and then the other one opens with Simon. And then the first reprise with Simon singing Mad World. But then when she gets into a heated argument with Simon, then I absolutely love the scene when Mo steps in saying enough, and then he brings them over to his apartment. He puts on I Love It by Icona Pop, and they just start rage dancing, letting all of their energy and emotions out through that dance. That's one of my favorite scenes in the show, in the whole show as well. It's just fantastic. And then at the end of that episode, this beautiful, calm, peaceful moment of love between Zoey's parents celebrating their anniversary when they sing Perfect by Ed Sheeran. So touching, but it's just devastating knowing that it's not actually happening. It's just what they're both feeling, but it just truly is that nice, peaceful moment at the end of this really intense episode. Also, I love another one when her brother David and her sister-in-law Emily, played by Alice Lee, sing Just Give Me a Reason, that duet, the first duet that she hears. That one's just so beautifully performed as well, and with their struggles, that he's feeling insecure about the fact that they are having a baby boy. And then that's the first time where she really fails with the power. And then Mo helps her realize that you have to look at failure in a different way, that failure can lead to be a stepping stone towards success. So Mo, with all of his words of wisdom, Mo is just so absolutely amazing. And I also love when Mo has a new man in his life, seeing that relationship with Eddie, played by Patrick Ortiz, and them singing Baila Mos on the dance floor where they're just really into each other, but you see everyone at the club it's just so funny, what's actually happening around them, but they're just lost in each other. It's just so beautiful too. So all of these moments that we see with the power, all these different ways that they portray emotion, it's so beautiful. And all right, I've been tiptoeing around it. Let me finally get into the whole love triangle, Team Simon and Team Max. So, starting out with Team Simon. First off, I totally get why Zoey is into Simon. He's really good looking. Yes, they're both good looking, but Simon, he just has that quality to him where he's really confident, and they do have an emotional connection. There's a mutual attraction there. At the same time, though, the whole basis of their connection is with grief, really, and that both of them are grieving their fathers, even though Zoey still has her father, but with Simon, how he's already lost his father. So they both have that connection that she doesn't necessarily have with Max. And we do see the struggle with him that when we first find out in the pilot that he's engaged to Jessica, his fiancée, played by India de Beaufort. And it's so devastating, though, in episode 6, Zoey's Extraordinary Night Out, when Jessica is realizing something's going on between Zoey and Simon, and when she sings Say My Name by Destiny's Child, her and her I Do crew, that's a great performance as well. I know for a fact Austin Winsberg said that's one of his favorites of the whole season. And a moment I really love in that performance is when they're singing the part, could it be that you're at the creek with another lady, and then they just blatantly gesture to Zoey, and then her eyes widen. That's just a really great moment as they're singing. Then with Simon reading his speech, then he just says to Jessica, so, oh my goodness. But then after they break up, that is so devastating. Again, such an absolutely beautiful, stunning performance at the end of Zoey's Extraordinary Silence when they sing Happier. And it's so powerful and graceful, and another absolutely breathtaking performance, where that one in particular really reminded me more of Dancing with the Stars, because just two partners dancing, but tragically they're breaking up. And what really got me was at the very ending when they both get on the elevator and they reach for each other's hands and they just move away, and it's just the end of a relationship, and it's terrible, but they're both singing they want each other to be happier. Because also there's a great line from Mo when he's saying how could you be doing this to both of these women, when he kissed Zoey, but then he's still with Jessica, and he's saying, I'm not a bad person, Mo, and Mo says he understands, but hurt people hurt people. That's such a powerful line that is tragically true, that he doesn't mean to be doing this, but he needs to really figure himself out what he really wants. So then when he and Zoey go on a date, when she's over his new apartment, but then when he sings the reprise of Mad World, and she just gets angry because he's just going through the same thing. I understand her getting angry with him, but then when she lashes out saying your grief is boring, that's just really crossing the line. But again, it's because her grief is just coming out in this way with her anger. But, I mean, he just broke up with his fiancée, so of course he's not really going to be emotionally ready as much as she is attracted to him, as much as he is attracted to her. And he really is conflicted, though, because also even earlier when he goes over to her apartment and he asks her, when he's thinking about his father, it's his birthday, and thinking, could I have done more? And then when he sings, should I stay or should I go? And then there's just so much heat to it by the end when they are just staring at each other, and she says, you should go, because again, it's just all of his feeling, what he's really feeling. So he doesn't know, though, that she has this power. So far, the only people that know are when she tells her father and Mo, and then when she tells Max. So that's interesting, too, to think about. So really with Simon, he just really needs to work on himself more. They all do, Zoey as well, especially as we know how this season ends. But what I do admire about the love triangle, before I get into Max, what's been said in articles and stuff, which I genuinely agree with, I appreciate first off that there's a level of respect, that both of the actors have said this, that neither of them sees Zoey as a prize, that they're just all their own person, that it's never been a competition. They always have respect for one another, Max and Simon. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that there is valid argument for Team Max, Team Simon, and Team Neither, and most importantly, Team Zoey. John Clarence Stewart in particular said he's Team Zoey, and Skylar Astin has said he's Team each of them as individuals, and Jane Levy too has said she doesn't owe anything to either one of them, that she is losing her father, and that it's perfectly okay for her to be attracted to her coworker and have feelings for her best friend. So that's all perfectly valid, and again, it's all human. So that just makes it feel more real, as messy and complicated as it is, that she really does have feelings for both of them. So going into Team Max now, I am a sucker for the whole best friends falling in love trope. And all of his love songs are very sweet and just showing how much he really feels about her, how deeply he feels for her. Like in episode 2 when he sings Sucker, and that one's all flirty and cutesy, but then Zoey just pushes him away basically. She's just too overwhelmed. So then when she just sets him up with their barista Autumn, played by Stephanie Styles, and that's great too. That just reminds me that after when they date and it doesn't work out and then they break up, then when Autumn is singing You Give Love a Bad Name, And when she throws the coffee at him, that's happening in the zoality. But then in reality, then it's just back to normal. That's just a great visual, how like he had the coffee on him, then a second later, it's just normal again, that this is just what's actually happening. They're just standing there. So the editing in this show is just so fantastic. The main editor is David Dean. He's edited the most episodes. And then the other editors are Annette Davey, John Koslowski, and Katie Abel. So, I mean, really, props to the editors. Another thing that comes to mind as I'm saying this is with Tobin's Heart Song, when he's singing and then Zoey's going up to Max and telling him, oh, he's singing a heart song right now. And then he's like, what are you talking about? Like, he looks, you hear that sound effect, and then you just see Tobin sitting there. So how it's like simultaneously, seamlessly, what's really happening and what's happening with the heart songs. That's just really, really well done. There's also a cute little fun fact that I read on Twitter, in fact, when Zoey's over Mo's apartment and then Mo gives her a straw to drink her wine, and then she's just blowing bubbles. That's just a little moment that was after they yelled cut, and he just put that in the middle of the scene. So, props to the editing, like the cinematography too, with all the musical numbers in particular. When we're in the zoality with it, it's just really well done. But anyway, with Max, the thing I don't like is that he takes his anger out on Zoey for something she can't control with her powers, when he gets upset that she has feelings for him and Simon. And also when he does the whole thing with the flash mob, that's when Zoey tells him she has this power in Zoey's Extraordinary Confession, when he performs If I Can't Have You in the flash mob. And I understand that for the sake of the show, it was a clever thing. And then when she realized, oh my God, this is real life. And watching it for that first time, it was just really clever to me. Like when she's saying, why'd you have to go and sing to me? And he's saying, you said you wanted more Max in your life. I want that too. And she's like, oh, you can hear me? He's like, what does that mean? First watching, I thought to myself, oh wow, are her powers evolving or something? That's really cool. But I get, for the sake of just doing a fun thing, that, oh wait, this is actually happening. But it's one of those things where, Max, know your audience. You should know your best friend, that she wouldn't be into something like this. And I get it for the sake of the plot, that like he wants to just push himself to telling her he loves her. That's really sweet and all, but just too big of a gesture. It's just a bit much. That said, it's just sweeter when he just is doing things out of the own kindness of his heart. Like in episode 2, when he brings the butterscotch pudding to Mitch and he didn't know Zoey was there. So that's just a really sweet thing, and showing how much the family means to him. So that's a really nice, genuine thing. Also, of course, a fan favorite song when he sings I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles in Zoey's Extraordinary Night Out. That's just, I mean, come on. That's just so sweet. And also what makes it really great is that at the beginning of that episode, when Autumn was angrily singing to him, unknowingly to him, but when he says, sometimes I feel like I can't do anything right, but then by the end he really comes through for Zoey, and then he says how I'm always here for you. And then when he's just singing the slowed down version of the song, like really serenading her, so she just knows that he's totally in love with her. So I can understand why she's not ready to explore that, as she says, because she never really saw him that way, and also because she doesn't want to risk losing him as a friend. But also, I get the whole thing where, because they've been friends since they both started at Spark Point, so then just seeing her male platonic friend now just in a different light, and then, maybe there's something to him. I am kind of attracted to him. I get that too. So, like, that's very real and authentic as well. And it's, again, not that she doesn't have feelings for him, it's that she's just not ready to explore that. And that also, she does have feelings for Simon, too. Then, like, when he sings Bye 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 by NSYNC, and that's amazing, too, though, that they got that song. But also, what's funny is that also that I read on Twitter, that apparently they came very close to, like so many times throughout the season, for Max to sing I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. And no offense to NSYNC, but Backstreet Boys all the way. That would have been so amazing. So I'm rooting for that. Oh my God, that just would have been so, like, heart-meltingly sweet. But then jumping to the season finale, Zoey's Extraordinary Dad. What an episode. So incredible. And I like that it still has the balance of the light-hearted humor, and then when it gets, obviously, way more emotional. But I mean, you got Simon singing Jealous, and Jane Levy has said she prefers that version over the Nick Jonas version. I agree. I mean, that was just a really great performance. Oh my goodness. And then it's just funny how she says, oh, you have nothing to worry about with Max, but then, as we know, then when they are having their movie night, and then when she says, oh, I got your job back, because then at that point he had gotten fired. I didn't mention that whole thing with the sixth floor. I'm not going to get into all that. But then when he's saying, actually, I don't really want the job back. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see what I can do on my own. And then she gets that spark of, I like seeing this side to you, that she likes the ambition, seeing him in a new way. So then when she just kisses him, I felt it. He's like, why'd you do that? I just felt it. So this whole scene, it's as sexy as it is hilarious. It's played so well. Skylar Astin did such a great job with this, with him singing All of Me. It's just so great. And he's just, that's when he's just so deeply in love with Zoey. There's no going back. Oh my goodness. But it's just so hilarious that he's unknowingly blocking himself. So when she slaps her hand on his mouth, it's you don't know this, but you're singing a heart song to me right now. He's like, oh my God, so embarrassing. Oh, poor Max. And then when he just jumps in, starts singing, I Know You Want Me. That was hysterical. Oh my God. Goodness, that's just so funny. And that did answer a question that had crossed my mind, which was, what happens if she's just making out with a guy and then he's just getting really into it, and then and then there you go, this is what happens, that it disrupts it. It's just so funny. But it's just so great. So, I mean, and it was hot too. He pushes her up against the wall, oh, yes, hello. I may or may not be crushing on Skylar Astin, but anyway. One other thing, though, before I get into the heavy stuff of this episode, the true, absolutely beautiful rest of it, the whole thing when it goes back to when she's at the hospital thinking that when her brother's saying that Emily's in labor, but then it was just Braxton Hicks contractions. So then when she sees the guy with the MRI machine again, and he's saying, oh, it's really extraordinary, isn't it? How many people it's helped, and then he's singing, I got the music in me. I mean, that couldn't have been a coincidence, right? I mean, there's got to be something to that. That's going to be interesting to see. Did he intentionally give Zoey these powers? Do other people have this power? It's going to be something interesting to learn about. But then, tragically, when Zoey gets the phone call from home, we find out that Mitch is going to die. It's just so absolutely devastating. But it's so beautiful with each of the goodbyes. And when David and Emily sing Lullaby, Goodnight My Angel by Billy Joel, and Mitch is singing it to them as well, the entire time my vision was blurry. Both times watching this episode, all the way through. Oh my God, that was so beyond touching. Just truly unbelievably beautiful. And I absolutely love what Howie says when Zoey asks him about death, and he gives his insight, and he says, death is hideous and ugly and grotesque and wildly, wildly unfair. Or maybe death is beautiful and spiritual and transcendent, and sometimes a very necessary and very freeing escape from our physical bodies when they are no longer habitable. So then when she just decides to see, when she just gives that final speech to her father, and also Maggie's goodbye to Mitch when she sings Dream a Little Dream of Me, it's just beautiful. But then when she gives the speech that, as Austin Winsberg had said, paralleling the speech she gives to him in the pilot, when she's saying first all of those problems, that now she's doing well at work, and the guy she likes her back, but then she hooked up with her best friend, but then she says that I'm going to be okay, and I just wanted you to know that. And then when, I don't want to start getting really emotional, because that's, but that whole scene then when he's leaving and they have that last dance together, and it's so beautiful. That is my favorite moment of the entire season. I just can't put it into words how powerful that was, this final gift, and it's just so beautiful that he's saying that you're always going to hear me, whether it's a song or not. And then when they're just dancing, and it's just that last joyous moment, and the instrumental of True Colors, everything about that scene was absolutely perfect and incredible and beautiful. And another sweet thing too was that that just reminds me, another sweet moment with Max when he gets to say his goodbye to Mitch, and then when he says to Maggie, and I told him exactly how I feel about his daughter, and then she just teasingly says, well, had the key already knew. That's just one, that to me I'm sorry it seems Simon, but that's to me solidifies that Max's end game, because, that's the kind of thing you say to someone where you want to, that's the woman he wants to marry. And Zoey does have deep feelings for Max, but, it's not the time for that. But still, it's just a beautiful thing. And also, more importantly, the fact that Max calls Simon, because that's just a wonderful thing, first off, that he's putting his own feelings aside, he's doing what's best for Zoey. And also it's acknowledgement when he says, like, oh, just do whatever it is you do, send her a text. So he's acknowledging that they do have a connection, that he can't help her the way Simon can to an extent. So then when Simon just comes over to give her a lasagna, it's just a sweet thing. And then he's saying, I'm here for you. And she just says, I'm going to need one of those grief baskets that I made you. He's like, oh, well, how about a grief trunk or whatever? That's just a sweet thing. So again, that level of respect, and that, I think if the tables were turned, Simon would have done the same thing. So that's just wonderful. And then the whole final scene of the episode, again, I admire the ambition of this show. Absolutely amazing. And I was reading things like it being teased, oh, it's going to be a 7-minute continuous shot. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, what song is it going to be? And then I just knew. And of course, it's American Pie. And I will say I prefer this version over the original. No offense to Don McLean. It's just wonderful. But the level of detail in this is just absolutely incredible, with each character singing each specific line, and the fact that it's one continuous shot once they're inside the house, that it goes from day to night, and the cinematography of it, it's truly absolutely amazing all the way through. I absolutely love it. It's one of those things where you can watch it each time, notice something different. Like for the first time around, I didn't notice the kids with the taboo buzzer, like with Mitch using the taboo buzzer, 1 buzz yes, 2 buzzes no. And just things like, one thing I really liked too was seeing the doctor there, and he just shakes Max's hand, and just amazing performance from everyone. And then the ending with Zoey singing the lyrics to herself, the day the music died. It's absolutely perfect. And I also love Max giving Zoey a kiss on the forehead. And something I didn't notice too the first time around was that when he's singing his part, that he just lowers himself onto the step to just sit next to her, and she just rests her head on his shoulder. And another beautiful thing too, when Maggie sings the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, and you see her son step in, and then her daughter-in-law step in, and then the Holy Ghost is Mitch. And it's just one of those things where, as much as funerals are a goodbye, they're also a celebration. So also, like, in the background, seeing his friend Paul, like, telling stories about Mitch, and the part with Mo, like, having a drink with Maggie, they're just, toasting to Mitch's life. And it's just a beautiful thing, everyone giving their condolences. And then just when they're all gone, though, and they're just sitting there, and then Zoey looks over and at Mitch's empty seat, and she just takes her mother's hand. It's just absolutely amazing. And then the dedication to Austin's father in loving memory of Richard Winsberg. Such a powerful tribute. And it is now one of those things where just because the person's gone, the relationship doesn't end, that now it's living with your grief. And so it will be interesting to see where they go from here. And also things like seeing the birth of Zoey's nephew, that'll be adorable. Also exploring other things like maybe Max, like just what he's going to do with his career. And another just fun thing too is that I love how with each episode, like it censors with a curse with a guitar riff and then just goes into the title screen. That's just great. Like what the? And then guitar riff. That's just great. That's just a fun thing. But I mean, there's so many more songs to explore and things like that. I could sit here and just say artists I'd want to hear on this show, but I'm just more interested in seeing how the narrative progresses and where these characters go from here. So again, truly an absolutely wonderful show. I can't praise it enough. And I've got the music in me. And with that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, I'm not even supposed to be here today, but I will be when I discuss Clerks. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.